Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Bruce Fitzsimmons. One very quick point. It's been brought to my attention that in Section 7 under the proposed vote, it says that amending Section 5.04 by adding a new use number 1.14 mixed use and by adding SP for special permit under the columns B1, B2, B2A, B3, B4, B5 is erroneous in that we're not going to add it under the B1 district. The table that you see that follows is correct under the bylaw, under the warrant article, but the text in Section 7 is incorrect by listing B1. Of course, Mr. Doherty will now amend that to add it back in.
So, if I may, you want to administratively strike out B1. Is that what Mr. Doherty's amendment is trying to do?
No.
Puts it back in?
Yeah.
Okay.
Keep it the way it is, I guess. Unintentionally.
Okay. Yeah, well, we'll deal with it when we vote. Ms. Fiore? I got you, Ted. Mrs. Fiore?
When I first became a town meeting member, these zoning articles never came up in the beginning like they have over these past few years. I think it's unfair to new town meeting members, never mind those of us who've been around for a while, to have these all put before us so quickly, but nevertheless, they're here. I'm only not speaking to the article as much as the effects. One of the things I do, because I live in East Arlington, I'm very close to the people in Cambridge, and I go to meetings of the North Cambridge Stabilization Committee, which is fighting to preserve some kind of decent life in North Cambridge. And the same developer has, the same project manager is in charge of most of those developments that are now have covered what we had hoped over the years to have a nice open space for wildlife and so forth. But besides that, this makes me worry because all of the building that's gone down there was permitted 8 years ago. So what happens is that businesses come along, they get a permit, but then they don't build, and then the person who may buy their property does something entirely different. You never know what's going to happen. So I'm a little bit concerned about this permitting business ahead of time. I personally don't think it's a good idea. I might add that I was even offered a couple of plane tickets to go to California so I wouldn't have to listen to the pile driving on Route 2. They forgot that what I really am concerned about, and the same thing here, is traffic. I haven't heard anything about traffic. Not the soil conditions so much here, but I hear nothing about them over there. So the citizens don't get their questions answered when the permitting is done years ahead of time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Fiore. Andy O'Brien? Thanks, Jim.
Thank you, Andy O'Brien, Precinct 16. This warrant, I don't know a lot about, but from what I've been hearing, sounds like a pretty good thing. I think it's important that we have a chance to work in the town that we live in, and there are a few opportunities to do that. But I guess my question is this a Trojan horse to bring in more housing into Arlington, or is this indeed something that will bring more business in?
Is that a rhetorical question or a real question?
Oh, it's a real question. I'd like to hear what they have to say.
Ms. Kowalski?
Yes.
Carol Kowalski, Director of Planning and Community Development. Residential there's a lot of pressure in the market right now for residential development. We're going to continue to see that pressure, whether town meeting decides to approve this bylaw amendment or not. We'll continue to see that. This way, though, it's intended that we at least we have a way of trying to keep some business use when someone comes to the redevelopment board to convert business use to residential. That's the short answer.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, that's it? Okay. Mr. Streifeld? Mark? Mr. Jones, Alan?
Alan Jones, Precinct 14. And in my day job, my wife and I run a very small high-tech company. But I've been for a long time a real booster of any sort of entrepreneurial and innovative efforts. I'd love to see more of that in Arlington. I'd love to see Arlington be the home of the next HubSpot or RailRunner or VisiCalc. And it seems to me that this article, this change, you recognize that, the old timers, that this sort of change might allow development that'd be more attractive to smaller, innovative, fast-growing companies. And Ms. Kowalski did confirm that there weren't any particular developers waiting around the corner for this to happen. So I have to think that the planning department probably does have some ideas for economic development activities that would work better if this change takes place. So, Mr. Moderator, I'd like to find out if there are any plans or even thoughts about how we might take advantage of this change through economic development should we pass this.
Ms. Kowalski, can you address that question? Thank you, Mr. Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Carol Kowalski, Director of Planning and Community Development. We are pretty close to filling the Economic Development Coordinator position that town meeting approved last year. I'm very excited about that, and we will be able to then move forward with the economic development component of the master plan. We will also look forward to getting the final report from the Economic Development Self-Assessment Tool, which is being conducted by the Dukakis Center for Regional Policy at Northeastern. They worked with us to survey business owners and business landlords in Arlington to create a SWOT analysis, our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats for economic development. So with that information, we will then work with entrepreneurs in Arlington, entrepreneurs and technology people in Arlington, to try to attract and create opportunities for Arlington residents to work here, to create business incubators here, to try to attract the kind of employment opportunities and business opportunities that this community are well matched with. Thank you.
Mr. Moderator,
Yeah.
could I follow up?
Okay, Mr. Jones.
And if I would ask, maybe it's not obvious, but if somebody from planning could connect the dots on how this change might promote that sort of entrepreneurial activity.
Yeah, if we can, from here on, I'll keep our questions kind of narrowly focused towards the article as opposed to the wonderful things we're going to do in the future. But as they relate to this article, yeah.
Carol Kowalski, Director of Planning and Community Development.
Lead in.
This type of mixed use, the incentives are intended to actually promote redevelopment of underutilized lots, to create the kind of economic development opportunities and business opportunities that look like Arlington, that look like the kind of places where people in Arlington with the skills that this community has can stay in Arlington to create their new company or to work together with peers on new enterprises. So it's a way of trying to add just enough so that the market will respond to redeveloping underutilized sites so that we can work with Arlington people to get those opportunities realized in the business component of these mixed-use developments.
Thank you. Is that all, Mr. Jones?
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Rierig?
Brian Rarick, Precinct 8. I rise in support of the Redevelopment Board's motion on this article. And I think we're coming to understand, or I'm coming to understand anyway, that the specter of the very sort of obnoxious hypothetical that we saw earlier is really an impossibility under this article, given the parking requirements and the requirements of environmental design review. But I think I am sensing some members being troubled by the idea that the height requirement, the height limitation in this proposed zone would be 50 feet. And while I think it's clear that how that height availability would get used is the subject of environmental design review, nonetheless, the fact that it's there and the fact that something could be 50 feet tall, I think, is troubling to a lot of people. So I'm wondering, Mr. Moderator, if we could get some input on why 50 feet was established as the maximum height in this proposed revision, how it compares to what's available to a developer under the existing zoning, and why the proponents thought it was necessary to go to 50 feet as an incentive here.
Ms. Kowalski, 50 feet?
50 feet was chosen in part because retail usually requires a greater height than residential. So you need to provide that on the first floor if that's where the business use is going to go. You also need to provide a certain amount of density to make the project worth doing for a developer. The information I have from mixed-use developers in this area is that you need about 3 stories above retail to just, to start to make it, to have the numbers work. So we didn't want to make it so tall. We did not want to make it so short that it didn't get used. I've seen mixed-use developments, mixed-use amendments in other communities' bylaws that are so restrictive that after all the trouble of approving them, they've never been used. And I didn't want, and I don't think the board wanted that to happen here.
Answer your question, sir? Okay, thank you. Mr. Loretti for a second time. You get 5 minutes this time, sir.
Just a few of the questions. If we could put up that sketch again that people seem to hate so much, Mr. Good, I'd appreciate it. Because I said absolutely nothing about parking in relation to this figure. What I did say, or what I should have said, is that this bylaw amendment significantly reduces the amount of required parking. And since I didn't mention how many units were there or how many square feet of commercial space might be in that building, there's no way to determine whether there's sufficient parking or not. Now, in terms of this being a special permit use, indeed it is, and if I said otherwise, I was mistaken and I apologize. However, if I were to put on my developer's hat and go before the redevelopment board and they denied me a permit to build up to the limits specified in the dimensional requirements, I can take them to court. And I would suggest that if I'm not asking for anything special from the redevelopment board, and I'm just building to the standards that you are passing at town meeting members, I would have a very good chance of prevailing. I've sat on the other side of that board, and I am amazed at the power that town meeting ascribes to them. Believe me, it's not there. The other thing, a couple other things I would like to address is, one, I don't think Ms. LaCourte got her question answered, and I'm not sure I'm forgetting his name, the person who asked about whether this is a Trojan horse for more housing. O'Brien, thank you. And indeed it is, because there is no minimum amount of commercial required, except that most of the frontage on the first floor be devoted to commercial use. And that's all, that is the only requirement. That's not something the redevelopment board gets to determine. That's written into the law that you are being asked to pass. The other thing I'd like to address is the claim that we cannot build mixed use right now. And I'd like to read to you from one sentence from section 5.02 of the bylaw. And what it says is, and this applies to all of the business districts, in the case of existing commercial uses, the addition or expansion of residential use within the building footprint shall not require adherence to setback regulations for residential uses, even if the residential use becomes the principal use of the property. So I would question how much this change is really needed, and I would question the claim that we can't build mixed use right now. The other point I would like to make regarding Mr. Doherty's comments. He would like to expand this bylaw change to the B1 business district. Just so you know, if I didn't say it before, B1, as you drive up and down the commercial districts in town, are houses. They are structures that were built as 1- and 2-family homes that are typically used for offices. It might be doctor's offices, dentist's offices, et cetera. So it would allow, again, subject to special permit, buildings 5 stories high and 50 feet high, replacing what had been 1- and 2-family homes. And frankly, that was something the redevelopment board took out after the public hearing on the article based on some comments I made. Now, I see Mr. Doherty wants to put it back again. Finally, I do agree with Mr. Doherty's comment about the tax base and the potential for the town to get more tax revenue from residential development than business development. And again, that's really what this is about. That's why the proposed new use is listed as a residential use in the zoning bylaw, because that's what it is. So again, I appreciate the intent, I appreciate the good ideas people would like to see for mixed use, but I don't see this article doing it. And one of the last points I would like to make is the commercial rents charged in town and how they change when you get a new development. Commercial rents vary tremendously, from perhaps $10 to $40 per square foot. If you put in a new building, even if you use that first floor for commercial space, you are not going to be getting the quaint local businesses in there. You're going to tend to get the larger national chains because they can afford the higher rents. And a good example of that are the developments we've seen in Arlington Heights. If you look at Trader Joe's, for example, Starbucks, or in the or across the street where we have Unleashed and those types of businesses, that's what you're likely to find going into these mixed uses. The other types of businesses in these startups, I think that's largely a pipe dream. And frankly, a lot of them, I don't care if we do get a high-end speaker manufacturer, I don't want them replacing Cabrera Bakery. That is not the type of business that adds to the street life. And I think we really need to be very careful. I would ask you to vote no on Mr. Doherty's amendment, and please vote no on this article. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Deist? This motion to terminate debate on the article and all issues thereunder. All in favor of terminating the debate, please say yes. Yes. Opposed, say no. No. My opinion is a 2/3 vote.